Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories, where we play tales to take you away from today. I gotta say, I'm pretty excited about today's show.
Are you sure about that?
We have some critical emails to review, 2 stories from you guys, and Sylvia Schultz is back with another installment of Ghost Stories with Sylvia.
Yeah!
She continues the topic of music, and we have some great fun doing it. I've put together another round of old-time radio commercials, and finally, we end the show with a short story written by James Baldwin. So, let's light this candle with this 5-minute mystery.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by Toadstools and Odyssey. One can kill you, and the other can fix bad recordings. Well, almost fix. If you have a murder to complete, Odyssey is a bad choice. It will take out pops, clicks, background noises, and even scratches. But it leaves you alive and well. So remember, Odyssey cures recordings like the one that you were listening to.
An anniversary party is going on at the Brown household around the corner. One of the guests, George Taylor, pauses while eating his dessert to say,
Best lemon chiffon pie I've ever tasted, Mary.
Really?
I wish my wife could do as well.
Oh, thank you.
Say, it doesn't look as if Sam is appreciating it much, though.
Goodness, my cooking that fast. Sam, your head's practically in your plate. I guess he's fallen asleep every night, and I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Sam, sit up. Oh, it's dreadful. I'd better shake him. Sam!
Wait, can't he? He's dead.
How do you do? I'm Sergeant Barker, the Homicide Division.
Oh.
He's one of my boys, Mike Grady. Where's the body?
In the dining room at the table. We didn't move him.
Mm-hmm. I might as well be comfortable, everybody. This'll take just a little while. Dead, all right. Peaceful, too. Who's Mrs. Sam Brown?
I am.
Do you mind telling me what happened?
I guess not. I'm so shocked I don't know where to begin or what to tell you.
Well, you might as well begin by telling me what you served for dinner.
Well, we had soup first.
Soup? What kind?
Mushroom, then roast chicken, green peas, mashed potatoes, dessert, and coffee. But I don't see how this could mean anything.
Just routine, Mrs. Brown. Did Mr. Brown eat everything?
Yes, he did. He seemed to fall asleep over his coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And when I tried to wake him, I found he'd had a heart attack.
Yeah. That'll be all for a few minutes, Mrs. Brown. We want to take a look around. Notice anything about this table, Mike?
No, Chief, I can't say as I do.
Neither do I. Let's look in this kitchen here. Orderly person, isn't she? Stacked dishes after each course.
Yes, and here's the silverware over here. Look, Chief. One of these soup spoons has turned black.
Black? Let me see it. The only spoon that's tarnished, too. Well, I was beginning to think it was a heart attack or a perfect murder, but this silver soup spoon is evidence enough. Mrs. Brown?
Yes, Sergeant Parker?
I'm sorry to interrupt your little party, Mrs. Brown, but I'm sure your guests won't mind.
I don't understand.
You will, Mrs. Brown, you will. You see, you're under arrest for the murder of your husband.
Do you know why Sergeant Barker accused Mrs. Brown of murder? In a moment, we'll hear the solution. But first, a word from our sponsor.
So, we have a mushroom caper. Did you see how I did that? Pretty funny, huh? The question is, how does the detective know? I'm guessing the black spoon is the key, but let's head back and see. I am with it today. This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by Toadstools and Odyssey. One can kill, the other not so much. Make sure you're using the right product for the right job, or your results may suffer.
And now, back to our story. Sergeant Barker, how do you know it was homicide?
Well, Mrs. Brown took careful pains to wash the soup pans and soup dishes before she served the rest of the meal.
Yes, I can see that.
But she forgot one thing, to wash the silver soup spoons. What she didn't realize was that an hour later, by the end of dinner, the spoon her husband had used to eat his toadstool soup would give her away. She didn't know that toadstools make silver turn black. Mrs. Brown almost committed the perfect murder, but she forgot to wash one spoon.
Okay, can toadstools kill? Yes, certain types have nasty properties. Can they turn silver spoons black? Well, that is an old Italian wives' tale. They would place a silver coin in cooking mushrooms. If it turned black, they were toxic. The problem is both types can turn silver black, and both types don't do anything at all. Oh dear. This 5-Minute Mystery was brought to you by Toadstools, and let's leave it at that. When I started this podcast in 2011, I made 2 promises to myself. I would continue the podcast as long as it was fun, and I would always share the good news with the bad news. I believe that I've done both over the 370 episodes that we've had so far. This past week was a bit of a challenge for me because I received not 1 but 2 critical feedback posts to the website. As per my promise, here they are. The first comes from Jeff. He wrote, "Hi Ron, I don't mean any offense with this email. I really love the content of your shows. However, I must comment on the sing-songy inflection of your voice. It sounds forced, like a voice coach helped you with it. You have a great natural voice. Why not just go with it? Regards, Jeff." Now this I believe to be sincere feedback, and I appreciate it. I took what Jeff had to say, shared this note with a few folks, and I'm happy to say that no one agreed with Jeff. However, one person said that he would listen for it. I've never had voice lessons of any kind, unless you count when I was in the church choir as a kid. I do purposely act out the stories to add drama, and I try to make the intro and outro both warm and welcoming. I've had a lot of comments about my voice. I've heard comforting, great acting. I've even received and taken voice acting jobs because of the podcast. Jeff, I do appreciate what you think, that I have a natural voice, and that you enjoy the content of the show. I thank you for your comment, and I hope you continue to listen to the show. This next note comes from Matt. This I believe to be a mean-spirited comment, and I just read it out of spite. I don't agree with anything said, and because of how it's written, I pay it no mind. If you're going to send me feedback, please take time to write it out and make your case. Cussing at me, using bad grammar, and being insulting makes you seem petty. Here is, censored, is what Matt had to say. Ron, your podcast is trash, and you're an idiot. You material is all outdated, and you're settling from honest people who have we work to make their comments. Just shut this thing down and crawl in a corner and die. Don't bother to contact me. I hate you. Your friend Matt. Well, Matt, one thing you should know is that when you use the website to post your note, you left a trail that the FBI can follow. Don't worry, I have no plans to follow up on this, and I do thank you for your opinion, strange as it is. So, there you have it. I do want to say at this point, I love to hear your feedback, both good and critical. I can only get better if I know what to improve. I really don't take things personally, nor do I take it lightly. Most everything I get is positive, and because of your support and feedback of the show, I love doing it. And now, this message from Gladdy's Goodies.
I'm Gladdy, the dachshund, the face of Gladdy's Goodies. Are you worried about your pet's health? My parents were too, especially since I developed pancreatitis. They couldn't find any treats I could eat, so they made some. Our natural treats are healthy for all dogs, with and without health issues. We have lots of delicious flavors like chicken, turkey, salmon, sweet potato, beef, and more. With our homemade treats, you won't worry about the contents because they have no chemicals, fillers, or bad ingredients. Go to GladysGoodies.com now to get your fur friend a bag. And pick them up some swag while you're there. You'll be glad you did. Remember, we have the treats and swag to make their tails wag. Again, that's GladysGoodies.com. Again, that's GladysGoodies.com.
Thank you, Gladys. And don't you forget to use your very own promo code RONS to get your 20% discount. That is RONS. And now, here are your stories.
These are your stories, sent by you, for you.
This story is one of my favorite types. I've always had a fascination for the floating orb. I'm of the opinion that in most cases, these are life forms. Others suggest that they are alien encounters, and still others think that these are spirits of the departed. Whether they are ghosts, aliens, or cryptids, they are a lot of fun. This story is a real head-scratcher and was sent in by Brett Dixon from Mobile, Alabama. Brett writes, Ron, I'm not sure if this is a UFO story or something else. You've been asking for UFO tales, and this is the closest I have. I hope you like it. I call this story the DeStoto Orbs. This happened last summer while on vacation in DeSoto State Park. Some of Alabama's most beautiful scenery can be found in the eastern part of the state. The park is renowned for its wildflowers and rushing waterfalls. One of the tallest in the state is DeSoto Falls, which comes in at 107 feet high. The park is also popular for climbing, biking, and hiking. My wife Amy and I were camping there and decided to visit the falls at night. I wanted to do some time-lapse photography and picked a night where the moon was full and the skies were clear. To say it was the perfect night does not begin to describe it. We set up the equipment and began shooting the falls at various locations. Since we were using a combination of digital and film, we knew already that we were getting some fantastic shots. I can send you a few if you want. On one of the photos, we noticed a streak of light running across the picture from side to side. Neither of us remembered any light crossing the scene as we took the picture. But there it was, bright white and orange. We looked for the source of the phenomenon, but came up empty. We decided that it was some kind of firefly. After all, lightning bugs are pretty common in Alabama. We set back to work when Amy whispered for me to look up. I lifted my head up in time to see 3 orange orbs disappear into the falls, only to pop back out of the water a few feet from where we were set up. They came towards us slowly, and I was quick to grab my camera to capture a picture. They stopped a few inches from Amy and began to slowly move around her. I was stunned for a moment, but managed to lift the camera to take the photo. As I looked through the viewfinder, I couldn't see the orbs. I lowered the camera and they were still there. I took a few pictures before they flew off and disappeared back into the falls. We never saw them again that night. Later, I looked at the pictures I did take. They were horribly out of focus and showed no signs of our orbish visitors. Brett Dixon, Mobile, Alabama. Well, Brett, that is one of the best orb stories that we've had on the show. Similar to others, but yet totally unique. That behavior seems to support my theory that orbs are a life form of some sort, and hey, may even be related to the firefly. Thank you for sharing your story, and please do send me some of your pictures. This next story was sent in by Candace in New York. I make it no secret that one of my favorite things about the podcast is when people send in their stories about where they listen to the show. Here is an answer from Candace. Hello, Ron. I wanted to tell you my story, which will probably sound made up. Things like this don't happen in real life. I started following you back in 2012. I'm not sure when. I'm ashamed to admit that I do fall behind and let the shows pile up. A lot. That turned out to be a good thing. A few winters back, my husband and I were asked to take care of a summer home for a friend. It would mean being snowed in for several months, but we would have outside communication. That is, if the line stayed up and the dish stayed in the tree. Neither worked out, and we lost everything other than shortwave radio. Sound like a Stephen King novel? We got pretty bored up there while we waited for the repair crews to fix things up. We decided to make Ron's Amazing Stories a nightly event until the stories ran out, which, by some amazing coincidence, happened at the same time as the cable and power were restored. Thank you for your show. You are a lifesaver. Candace and Mike. Well, Candace, thank you for your story, and I love to hear things like this, but I am sorry that I had a captive audience. I would like to add, I hope you at least had some good podcasts to listen to. Back in 2012, I was still trying to figure things out. Someday, I hope to get all this podcast stuff down. Thank you again for your story. If you want to hear your story on Ron's Amazing Stories, please let me know. All you have to do is go to ronsamazingstories.com, click on the story submission banner, and type in your information or story. If you leave your information, I will contact you and we can get together and I will write your story for you. If you want to write your story, then please do, and I will use it if I can. So, I want to thank everyone that did send in a story today. You guys are the best. We all love a good story, but what we truly crave is a ghost story. It's time now for Ghost Stories with Sylvia. Sylvia Schultz is a librarian and author by day, but at night, she becomes a ghost hunter. Following a lifetime spent in the pursuit of the weird and the strange, her non-fiction works include Ghost of the Illinois River, Fractured Spirits, 44 Years in Darkness, Hunting Demons, and The Spirits of Christmas. We now cross over the veil and join Sylvia as she tells us more tales from the unknown. Are you there, Sylvia?
I'm here. Come on in, Ron.
I have been looking forward to this, and I've heard that we're going to continue with music because we got an email from someone, and I'm excited about this email.
I am too.
Now, do you want me to go ahead and read it?
Would you please? Yes, just introduce it to everyone. Yeah.
Well, this was sent to us via the webpage, and it comes from Gina Westbrook. Unfortunately, we don't know where Gina's from. She left that question blank, but we do have her email, and it reads, "Hello, Ron. I have a question for you. I love the podcast and have been listening for about 3 months. I currently follow you on Facebook and Apple Podcasts. I love the segment with Sylvia. She is wonderful and fun to listen to. In the last podcast, she said that she thought music was a good way to connect with the dead. Where can I learn more about this idea? My mother recently passed away and she dearly loved music. How can I use this to connect with her? Gina Westbrook. So what do you think about that, Sylvia?
I think it's a wonderful email. First of all, Gina, I'm very sorry for your loss. That's a wrench. I firmly believe that our loved ones are not actually gone, but it's still really rough not being able to talk to them every day and have them answer back, because most of us are not capable of hearing their answer back, and that's very sad. But I want to thank you for writing in. I really appreciate the kind words. And yes, I think that using music to communicate with your mother is a wonderful idea. I wish I knew what kind of music your mother liked, whether it was big band music or classical. I'm a fan of classical.
Me too.
But yeah, music is such a universal thing, and it's such a good way for people to connect, even if they're no longer here with us. Gina, my advice to you, and you can take this advice and do with it what you will. My advice would be to queue up a CD of your mother's favorite music and sit down in a chair, make yourself comfortable, light a candle if you want to, maybe have a photograph of your mother sitting on the table with you or on a small table next to you while the music's going. And if it were me, I would just sit and listen to this music that your mother enjoyed so much and think about her. Our loved ones are perfectly aware that we're thinking about them, and they will come to see us when we're thinking about them. I believe that personally, and I've had other people tell me that as well. So listen to the music, have a cup of tea, coffee, whatever you like, and just sit and think about your mother, look at her photograph, listen to the music she loved, and just talk to her. And if you really want to start a communication going, you can say something like, "Mom, if you're here, can you make the candle flame flicker?" Something like that. Or can you blow across the top of the tea cup and make the tea, the surface of the tea, jiggle a little? One very useful tool that ghost hunters like to use is we take a flashlight and we turn it on and we unscrew it as much as possible while still leaving the light on. So just the barest little touch will turn it on or turn it off. And we set it down carefully on a table, and that's what we use to ask questions. We tell the spirits, would you turn the flashlight on for a yes, and then turn it back off for a no, something like that. Just establish what you want them to do. And then they can use the energy from the flashlight batteries to communicate with us. So you can say, "Mom, if you're here with me and if you're enjoying the music, could you please turn the flashlight on?" And that's a really good way to communicate with the spirits. I've seen it work dozens of times. So Gina, thank you so much for your question, and I wish you the best of luck with your communications.
When you were talking about asking the candle to sway, that kind of touched a chord with me. That made a whole lot of sense because it seemed like such an easy thing to do. Such a personal thing to do. Now, yeah, you can wave your hand and probably fool yourself. But if you're careful and just are sitting there saying, "Hey, if you're here, make the candle sway." I love that. And it seems so personal to me. You know, a flashlight, that's 20th century, but a candle, I like that idea. I really do.
Oh, good. I was with a psychic medium at the library. She and I were sitting and having a conversation, and I was recording it. And I wanted her to help me communicate with my mother, who passed when I was 5. And I brought a picture of my mother, and it's an old photograph, of course, so it was kind of bent a little bit. So Diane assured me that my mother was in the room with us. So what I did was I actually stood this picture on end, and since it was a little bit curved because it's so old, it stood up, and I said, "Hey, Mom, if you're here, would you please knock the picture over?" I figured that was something light, something she could manage. And the picture did eventually fall over. I don't know if it was Mom doing it, but the picture did fall over at some point.
Well, and let's be honest. Let's take the whole other side of this. Let's say that you're completely opposed to the idea that ghosts exists.
Mm-hmm.
You can still get in touch with your loved one just by sitting down, thinking of them, and listening to their favorite music. You're still going to feel close to them, even if you don't believe that they're in the room. Am I wrong?
Exactly. That's the whole point. That's the whole point, is you're going to feel close to them. Whether or not you believe that they've gone on to the other side or heaven or nirvana or the Summerlands or whatever, or if they're there in the room with you, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're going to feel closer to them. That's a memory that you share, and it's an experience that'll bring the two of you closer together, even though one of you's not there.
I like that so much. I like that idea because it doesn't require belief.
Exactly.
It doesn't require that you say that you're crazy. It doesn't require, you know what I mean now. I'm not calling anybody here crazy, but I'm just saying it doesn't require any of that. It just says, I'm going to take a minute.
No judgment.
I'm going to listen to her music and think about her. And how could that not bring you closer to a loved one? How could it not?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love it for the believer and non-believer alike. I think it's great advice. I love it. Do you have any stories for us this time?
Yeah, I have a couple little stories. The first one that I'm going to share with you guys comes from a book called Dark Woods, Chill Waters by Marcus Britzi. He talks about a big, rambling 200-year-old house that somebody bought, and it was in somebody's family for a long time, and they sold it to somebody else. And the woman who bought it was first owned by sea captains and their families, and then it passed out of their family's hands in the 1920s, and it was purchased by Dr. Francis Benedict. He was a famous chemist and physiologist, and he owned the house for a while. 60 years after he bought the house, in about the 1980s, another doctor bought the house, Dr. Teresa Amuso, and she moved into the house, and an elderly neighbor of hers asked her if Dr. Benedict had made a visit yet. And the new owner said, well, I don't think so, because he's been dead since 1957. and the neighbor said, oh, that doesn't matter. Dr. Benedict has been known to visit the house and to come back for visits because that's where he died. So shortly after this encounter, the doctor and her son Paul were listening to a Mozart sonata when a really strange thing happened. In the middle of this classical piece, which they were listening to it on vinyl, on a record, in the middle of the classical piece, a jazz instrumental from the 1920s began playing and lasted for about 30 to 40 seconds.
Wow. Crazy.
And then it cut back to the Mozart, and they couldn't figure out how this happened. It wasn't there wasn't a radio playing. They were just using an old-fashioned record player. It was just the record, and they picked the record up. They couldn't find any defect on the record at all. And the next time they played the record with the Mozart sonata, the jazz music didn't show up.
No.
That little jazzy interval was not played the next time they played it, and it never showed up again.
Really?
It was just Dr. Benedict saying hello from the 1920s.
Well, I'm familiar with that style of jazz too. That's very different.
It's my favorite. I'm not a big fan of jazz, but yes, I do love 1920s jazz.
It's very Dixieland, very I don't know if they were calling it trad jazz by then, but a lot of basically each person soloing. Great stuff. Each person doing a solo, and they're just kind of keeping in time with each other. It's great stuff. Great music.
Yeah. And I think it's fairly closely related to ragtime, which is one of my favorite styles.
Very, very close. Yeah. Ragtime is great stuff too. But even that though had a lot more consistency to it, whereas the earliest
have
jazz,
a lot more structure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And whereas the early jazz was just more or less a bunch of people soloing. So good stuff. Yeah, it's great stuff. I'm sorry to take us off on a tangent there, but I do love my jazz.
That's quite all right. That's the fun part.
Yeah. Well, I did early on in Ron's Amazing Stories back, I'm going to say in the episodes, the 90-ish number episodes, I did a 2-part series on jazz. And I took us all the way from the original jazz and played snippets all the way up to acid jazz of the, late 90s. And unfortunately, a lot of the newer stuff is copyrighted, so I couldn't play it. But a lot of that older stuff from anything prior to 1940 is fair game to play. And so I played full versions of that early stuff. And I'm really off on a tangent now. Do you have another ghost story for us?
I do. Now this has to do with music, but only tangentially. I thought I'd throw it in there. In Spirits of Christmas, I wrote about the death of John Lennon when he was assassinated in December 8th of 1980. And I put that in Spirits of Christmas because his ghost still hangs around the Dakota in New York. Mm-hmm. And if I had known about this story, I would have put this story in the book too. I discovered a story just recently. This story comes from an article in Fate magazine from April 1987. A woman wrote in with her experience. She said it was December 9th, 1980, the very day after John Lennon's murder outside the Dakota. This woman was sitting in her living room, and she had several sets of records of vinyl just stacked against the wall in the living room. And each set of albums was, she says it was maybe 7 or 8 inches thick, standing on end and side by side. So you had these stacks of records against the wall. And she was thinking about John Lennon's death and the fact that he himself was very spiritual. And she was thinking about, a lot of people believe that life goes on even after death. And what would John Lennon say if he could speak to those left behind? Maybe he has something important to say that he'd really like to communicate with people. So she started concentrating on John Lennon. She said to herself in her mind, she said, if you're here and there's something you want to say about what happened or any other message, please know that I'm listening. And the woman writes, she suddenly heard a noise in the corner of the room. And she had closed her eyes to do this little bit of meditation. And she opened her eyes and she saw one stack of albums falling forward, one by one, very slowly, as if someone was flipping through them. And none of the albums had ever fallen before. They were kind of stacked up and leaning inwards against the wall. It would be pretty much impossible for them to fall outwards the way they were doing just now. And she said she could see the titles on each album as it fell until the falling stopped. She said she was shocked. The falling albums had stopped at the only Beatles album in the stack.
No way.
She said, what caught my eye was a picture of the 4 Beatles. From the cover, John Lennon was looking straight at me. From where she sat, she was basically eye to eye with this picture of John Lennon. She said she looked at it in disbelief, and it struck me. There, right in front of her, was the message that she had been asking for. The title was Let It Be.
Wow. What a great story.
Yeah.
That is just a classic, good story, Sylvia. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit before, and you told me, now this is from you, you said you had 3 stories for us.
I did say 3, and that's just been 2. The other one that I was planning on sharing with you guys was an experience that was shared with me for Fractured Spirits.
One of my favorite of your books, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Oh, man, wait till you read Fractured Souls. That's a corker. So Fractured Spirits, this a ghost hunting friend of mine, Ann Pritchard, worked a lot at the Bowen building, the building that we lost a couple summers ago. And she did a lot of volunteering there, did a lot of ghost hunting there. And one of the stories she shared with me was, again, using music to contact the spirits, get them relaxed enough to communicate, and just having a good time playing music with the spirits. And she said she and another ghost hunter brought a CD player out, and they were playing Knock 3 Times by the group Tony Orlando and Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
Some 70s song, whatever. And they were singing along with the CD, and they were recording. And after they were done singing and recording, they played the recording back, and they heard somebody else singing along with the song. She said it sounded like an old drunk guy trying to sing along.
Oh, is that one of the files that you have on your website?
I know she did not share the actual recording with me.
Oh, that's too bad.
So I've not heard it. She just described it to me. So I can't, that's not one of the ones that I can share with you guys.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, she just got she just got such a kick out of that.
It's funny. The last time we talked, you told us about the video of the shadow person coming up while they were doing the playing Prince. I went and looked at that, and by golly, there's a shadow right behind them walking up to them right then and there. That was just crazy. And they silenced it. They didn't use the actual backtrack because they were playing Prince's song, which is illegal to do on a podcast. So they couldn't play it, but still plain as D, there it was coming up right behind them, and no explanation. There's no way it could have been a person because it didn't move right. It just kind of, I don't know. What a great video that is. That's just wonderful. And if you haven't seen that, go back to that episode, and I have a link to the video and about the time that it starts on there. So you guys can look at that video. It is incredible.
And I will have a link to that video on my website and on the Fractured Spirits Facebook page when Fractured Souls comes out. I'll definitely be linking to that because it is mentioned in Fractured Souls. And
that's actually a pretty interesting, you get to see a little bit of how Sylvia works too, because you actually do a lot of talking in that episode. So
I do, yeah.
And so it's actually a kind of an interesting, and there's a lot more that happens than just that. That's just kind of the marquee moment of the whole evening. So Sylvia, we've hinted at it. We've touched on it, but you have a book that you just sent to the publisher. Talk to us about it. Tell us all about it.
Oh my goodness. This is, if you liked Fractured Spirits, you're going to love Fractured Souls. There's 90% new material, lots of new stories, lots of new experiences. The really fun thing about Fractured Souls is that, again, just the same as Fractured Spirits, I have links in the text to videos, recordings. There's a walking or driving tour of the hilltop. It takes you from the oldest building on the hilltop, the firehouse, all the way around the streets. Now, the hilltop was put together in the early 1900s. So it's very compact. It's very, very easy to walk around this hilltop and see the places that these people saw, that Dr. Zeller saw. It's designed for walking. It was designed at the beginning for walking because they didn't have cars. So it's very compact. It's very easy to get around. So there's a lovely little walking tour, and there will be a recording as well. And it's just super, super fun. I take great pleasure in showing people around the hilltop that I love so much and pointing out, well, this building is still here, and here's a haunted hot spot, and this is why this building is set up the way it is, and here's where another building used to stand, and here are the ghost stories associated with this building, and it's just ridiculous amounts of fun.
So how do you go about collecting the stories? Are they given to you? Are they all things that happen to you? How did you do that?
Well, some of them happened to me. Some of them happened to other people. A lot of people have been really generous about sharing their stories.
Wow.
And the book literally could not have been written without the help of all these people who graciously shared their experiences with me. I'm very grateful for that.
I'm excited. I know you can't give us a date, but can you give us an idea of what we're looking at? I know you just sent it to the publisher.
I am crossing my fingers that it's going to be out mid-May. On May 18th, there's going to be a kind of a flea market sort of thing on the hilltop called the Old State Hospital Bazaar. Mm-hmm. And I'll have a booth there. And I'm really, really hoping that I have books to sell, new books to sell on May 18th. It might not happen. I might just have a cover to show people and say, hey, this is coming, but hopefully by May 18th. We'll see.
All right. Well, you'll have to keep us posted.
Absolutely.
I do have one more question for you.
What's that?
I do want you to tell us about what's going on with your podcast and your blog, and maybe even tell us if people want to get in touch with you, where do they go?
Okay. Well, I'm very excited about the next episode of Lights Out. That is going to be, it's episode number 70. I know that's not going to impress you because you have so many shows under your belt, but I'm kind of jazzed about number 70. Number 70 is about number 70 is about Edinburgh Manor in Scotch Grove, Iowa. I went there with some friends of mine and met up with other ghost hunting groups there, and we just had a fantastic evening, and the evening ended with a personally experienced by me, and I'm not going to spoil it for you. I wouldn't for the world spoil it for you, but it's a lot of fun, and you guys should completely and totally listen to episode 70 of Lights Out, Edinburgh Manor, because there's something that happened near the end of the episode that you guys are really going to find amusing. I did, and it was a fun experience. I haven't really done a lot of blogging. I've kept up with every Monday morning I do an interesting fact. I think one of the recent interesting facts was that, and I have no idea how they figured this out, but Mr. Rogers went to the Crayola factory and poured the wax for the 100 billionth Crayola crayon. And I don't know who counted these. I don't know what color it was, but it's fun.
The last thing I have for us here is I did, while we were talking, go look up the history of jazz. That was RAS number 112 and 113.
Wonderful.
So if you want to go listen to those two episodes, that's what they are. And so all you got to do is go to the home website and type in those numbers, and you'll be able to listen to those two episodes. So Sylvia, I think we've covered everything that we wanted to cover on this one. Are you going to come back for next time?
I most certainly am. I wouldn't miss it.
So let's have your website one more time so people can come find all this wonderful stuff.
Yes, the website is sylviaschultz.wordpress.com, and that's SHULTS.
All right, and I'm Ron. She's Sylvia. We're done. Let's go home.
Good night.
Well, I'm back again with some more old-time radio commercials. This time, we have a theme. Can you guess what it is? Let's get started.
Here's the story of the 1940 cars in a nutshell. Best Bets Buick. See your nearest Buick dealer for complete details.
That was a short but effective one from Buick. This next one is something pretty special. Dinah Shore was a superstar of the 1950s and was sponsored by General Motors, then the largest corporation in the world. Dinah Shore helped make the low-price Chevy automobile the most widely selling car up to that point in history. How about that? Now, here is one of her radio spots.
See the USA in your Chevrolet. America is asking you to call. Drive your Chevrolet through the USA. America's the greatest land of all. On a highway or a road along a levee, performance is sweeter, nothing can beat her. Life is completer in a Chevy. So make a date today to see the USA and see it in your Chevrolet.
Traveling east, traveling west, wherever you go, Chevy service is best. Southward or north, near place or far, there's a Chevrolet dealer for your Chevrolet car.
So make a date today to see the USA and see it in your Chevrolet.
Have you heard of the Edsel? It's long gone now, but in its day it was, well, Ford invested heavily in the Edsels, saying that they were the car of the future, an expectation they failed to meet. To the public, they were considered to be unattractive, overpriced, and overhyped. But hey, here is one of their commercials.
They'll know you've arrived when you drive up in the 1958 Edsel, the car that's truly new from nameplate to tail lights. New from the front. New from the side. New from the rear. Only Edsel has the sleek, clean line design that sets it apart from the look-alike cars. And it combines new looks with the newest V8 engines in the world, the big new Edsel 400 and the power-packed Edsel 475. It is unlikely you have ever driven a car with so much real, usable power as the Edsel. And with Edsel's exclusive Teletouch drive, you drive more safely, more easily than you ever have before, because both hands can stay at the wheel while the Edsel shifts electrically. There's even the added luxury of new Edsel air suspension that's just like riding on air, because you are. And remember, of all the medium-priced cars, car for car, across the board, the 1958 Edsel is the one that's new and the lowest price, too. So see your Edsel dealer.
Another car you may or may not have heard of was the Studebaker. The Studebaker entered the automotive business in 1902 with electric vehicles and in 1904 with gasoline cars. Over the next 50 years, the company established a reputation for good quality and reliability. And it turns out, pretty good commercials.
This is the year of the Lark. The Lark is the car of the year. Look what's new for you from the Lark. It's here, it's here, it's here, it's here. It's a new convertible, seats 5 adults in style. It's so pert and perky, runs on pennies per mile.
The Lark by Studebaker, yours in 6 stunning styles for $60, including the new convertible and...
Look what else is new for you. It's here, it's here, it's here, it's here. It's a new Lark wagon with 4 convenient doors, and it's style for fun and frolic, but it's built for chores.
Look at the Lark yourself. Learn how it's been proven by 750 million miles of owner use. Visit your Studebaker dealer and see how nothing has been spared to build quality into the Lark. Discover why it's the value car of the year.
The Lark is the car of the year.
Well, that's all I have for this time. Did you guess the theme? If you said old car ads, you guessed right. How about that?
As read by. Amazing stories read by amazing people.
This time on As Read By, we have something that I just stumbled onto. It is a short story called Which Was the King? It was written by James Baldwin, who was an American educator and administrator. After his career, he began writing on such topics as legends, mythology, biography, and literature. Our story comes from his book, 50 Famous People, which is comprised of short stories about people. some more famous than others. The stories can't be strictly called biographical, but there is a little bit of truth in each one of them. Here is Which Was the King, and it is read for us by Dave Groffman.
One day, King Henry IV of France was hunting in a large forest. Towards evening, he told his men to ride home by the main road, while he went another way that was somewhat longer. As he came out of the forest, he saw a little boy by the roadside, who seemed to be watching for someone. "Well, my boy," said the king, "are you looking for your father?" "No, sir," answered the boy. "I'm looking for the king. They say he is hunting in the woods, and perhaps will ride out this way. So I'm waiting to see him." "Oh, if that's what you wish," said King Henry, "get up behind me on the horse, and I'll take you to the place where you will see him." The boy got up at once, and sat behind the king. The horse cantered briskly along, and the king and the boy were soon quite well acquainted. "They say that King Henry always has a number of men with him," said the boy. "How shall I know which is he?" "Oh, that will be easy enough," was the answer. "All the other men will take off their hats, but the king will keep his on." "Do you mean that the one with his hat on will be the king?" "Certainly." Soon they came into the main road, where a number of the king's men were waiting. All the men seemed amused when they saw the boy, and as they rode up, they greeted the king by taking off their hats. "Well, my boy," said King Henry, "which do you think is the king?" "I don't know," answered the boy, "but it must be either you or I, for we both have our hats on." End of Which Was the King by James Baldwin.
I love that story. I did a little research, and while I can't say that King Henry IV really met this child in the forest, it was common practice for him to ride on his own to escape the world of responsibility. However, his guards were never too far away. His given name at birth? Well, that was Henry Bolingbroke. How about that? Well, that's our show for this time. I want to thank Jeff, Matt, I guess, Brett Dixon, Candace, and Sylvia Schultz for your contributions to the program. You make the wheels on the bus go round and round. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, just head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you'll find everything you need. Do you want to help the show? Leave reviews and feedback on the service you use to listen. This really does help us to grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.